everybody. Sorry for being away from curriculum for so long again. Here's a recap and a review of some of what we talked about during our meeting a couple of weeks ago. I'd like to introduce you guys to the Understanding by Design curriculum design framework created by Wiggins and McTighe. It's not the only way to design a curriculum, but it's pretty highly regarded these days, and we have lots of material to support us. We just received some PD workbooks as well that you can find in the library. Go talk to Dave if you want to know more about that. I hope that this video can be a bit of a guide and help you as you begin to design your grade curriculum. Just quickly, here are some of the reasons that UbD works for us in our program. One of our visions was to create global citizens with 21st century skills. The performance tasks recommended by UbD take into account a few of the 21st century learning skills that we hope to grow in our kids. I'll tell you a little bit more about performance tasks later on. In terms of creating a learning community, UbD is strongly focused on student learning and on meeting standards. Also, we as teachers will need to reflect on our teaching practice and how we assess students to apply this new approach, so we'll get to learn something as well ourselves. Finally, the performance tasks provide very authentic learning opportunities and focus on understanding and skill growth versus memorization, and that leads to more authentic lessons. So overall, UbD is a pretty good match for our vision in more than a few ways. So the process is called Understanding by Design. The design part of Understanding by Design refers to backwards design. With backwards design, planning starts with the end, and that's the standards that need to be taught. It's a really goal-oriented and intentional approach that helps to make sure that the time spent in class helps to move students closer towards their learning goals. And those learning goals are meeting the standards, in our case the BC curriculum standards. The other big part of UbD, and that's the U bit, is understanding. If you read the text, there's a whole lot of philosophy kicked around about the difference between knowledge and understanding. I'll spare you that, but it is worth a read if you're into that kind of stuff. To start with, a good place to begin are these 6 facets of understanding. All philosophy aside, if your lessons and assessments approach learning from these angles, you'll probably be creating more authentic understanding in your kids. Now you can read this, but basically if kids can explain, interpret, or apply what they've learned, they're probably understanding it deeply. If they can look at information from a new perspective, or apply empathy by trying to put themselves in another's shoes, or if they can gain some kind of self-knowledge from what they've learned, then these are all indications that their understanding is more authentic, and they're not just getting rote memorization of facts. So, here's a really brief summary of how it works. When designing units using UbD, you begin by figuring out what you want the kids to learn. Next, you figure out what students need to be able to do to prove their understanding to you. Not just memorizing things, but actually understanding things when you assess them. Finally, you figure out what you need to teach them to prepare them for that assessment. So stage 1. First up, we identify our desired results. So the first bit there that you see about established goals will be the curriculum standards that you hope to cover. And they go first, right up at the top, so that you don't forget. Next, understandings are the big picture ideas that you want kids to walk away with and keep lifelong. Now, you might have forgotten exactly how to solve a quadratic equation, but you probably left middle school math realizing that math can be used to model problems. And that's the understanding, the big idea. You can find those big ideas in circles at the top of the BC curriculum pages. Next up, essential questions are exciting or intriguing or important questions in the field that we'll pose to the students and try to answer with our learning. The questions will drive and frame the learning. If you print out the elaborations from the Word or PDF of the BC curriculum, you can find some pretty good examples included. I'll put a link or an image below so that you can take a look. Finally, you can write the skills and knowledge that the students will need to get to meet the standards. And again, check out the images, and you'll see where you can find this stuff. But they're going to be on the left and right side of the BC curriculum. Stage 2 is where we're going to determine how we'll assess student mastery of the standards. Now there's 2 columns on the page. You've got performance tasks and other evidence. UbD puts a pretty big emphasis on performance tasks, and these are authentic tasks that assess understanding and transferability of learning. Now, there's still room for tests and quizzes though, don't worry. Another focus in UbD is on student reflection, so you should always try to provide opportunities for kids to reflect and self-assess during each unit. There's a document below, and you can click on the link, that will provide a simple framework for creating performance tasks. And again, the book goes into way more detail about this, but hopefully the document will give you a good starting point. Finally, the last step is to plan lesson elements that will provide your students with the info and the practice they need to succeed on the tasks and assessments. And the UbD book uses this WHERE TO acronym to help you remember some key things to include. I think it's a bit clumsy, and I don't really think it helps me to remember anything, but the ideas that it has are really good. It basically recommends that you hook the learners, share the standards, and it's best to do that in a kid-friendly way. I like to use I can statements, and so on and so forth. Self-evaluation and personalizing and differentiating learning are other key ideas that you can find in there. Now, what you're building when you create this learning plan is not a set-in-stone lesson plan. This is just a set of elements that you could apply in your classes when you need them. It's just a flexible guide. So, here's the whole thing stuck together. Try not to be intimidated. I know it looks like a lot, but this page that you're filling in here would cover multiple weeks of content. Also, you don't need to go through from top to bottom. You can just fill in different bits as you get ideas. So last up, let's see what it looks like in practice. Here's a typical unit plan that's not designed the UbD way. It's just following a textbook as the curriculum. As you can see at the top, the goals are typically just thought of as the unit title that you'll be teaching. In this case, it's surface area and volume. We often leave out big ideas and essential questions entirely. Knowledge and skills are typically just the stuff in the book pages. Assessments are typically working through the pages in class as a formative assessment, and maybe a quiz at some point. There's often not any project tasks assigned depending on the subject. And finally, the learning plan just includes some direct instruction and lecture followed by practice pages. Depending on the book and how close you follow it, the tasks might not be super authentic. And this probably looks pretty familiar to all of us. Okay, so here's the UbD style design. You'll be happy to see it's not totally different, but there's a bit more detail and some evidence of actual planning and creativity and design on the teacher's part. First, the curriculum standards are at the very top to remind me of what I need the kids to learn. Next, there's some big ideas and understandings about the study of mathematics. There's also some important essential questions to frame the learning. You can see one idea I really like here is that sometimes the best mathematical answer is not the best solution to real-world problems. And a good essential question, how well can pure mathematics model messy real-world situations? And you'll see when we get to the performance tasks how this essential question and these big understandings are taken into account. In terms of assessment, the quizzes and the pages are still there. But now kids have to complete a project that applies their learning and works to solve that essential question. The same is true for the learning plan. The book pages remain, but now there's an investigation added to prep for the performance task. Okay, let's stop there. The main thing to remember is that the standards come first and are expanded on and investigated through big ideas and interesting essential questions to devise learning goals. Next, you create assessments that check the mastery of standards using the 6 facets of understanding. Can students explain, interpret, or apply what they've learned? Have they developed perspective, empathy, or self-knowledge related to their studies? Test that. Finally, based on those assessment tasks, create instructions and activities that will support learning to meet the demands of the assessments. And that's it in a really oversimplified nutshell. Good luck, good night. Please visit me with questions. Thanks for watching this, and I can't wait to work with you guys to try to actually put the rubber to the road and get some unit planning done. Thanks again. Bye-bye.